cares what it costs? It'll look great on Mrs. Garrett.
Joe, we don't have enough money.
Forget the money. It doesn't have to cost anything.
Joe, you can't.
Relax, will ya?
If she gets caught, we'll be accessories.
How can we be accessories? We're in sportswear.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I got to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what is the trope we're going to talk about right now?
You have been caught shoplifting.
Shoplifting, scourge of the 80s, 90s, and today, Winona Ryder's
Those
first major
sticky-fingered
scandal.
children.
Yeah, we're talking about shoplifting episodes, another one where there's plenty to choose from in the sitcom world. This is a pretty straight up lesson learning sort of sitcom as PSA, or it can be, we should say. Of course, you know, you're going to have your more advanced postmodern takes on it, but I think as long as we've had families and sitcoms, we're going to have episodes about someone got caught stealing, somebody was pressured to steal something maybe, and what happens then.
That's
so
right.
What are our shows? What did we watch?
So we are watching The Partridge Family, Season 3, Episode 22, The Partridge Connection. The Facts of Life, Season 2, Episode 6, Shoplifting. Small Wonder, Season 2, Episode 11, The Shoplifter, and Home Improvement, Season 4, Episode 25, A Marked Man.
Yeah, so this is one that I'm sure has got to be on those little conversation cards that we play, our little how well do you know me game. But I honestly don't know the answer to this. Have you ever shoplifted or been caught?
I feel like I've told you this story.
I feel like you probably have. I'll put it this way. If I had to guess, I would say yes.
Because I'm the naughty one of the two of us. And if I had to guess for you, I would say no.
Yes, I would say even using the word guess is patting yourself on the back too much for that. But go ahead, tell us your experience with shoplifting
story. So at the end of the street where I grew up, there was a Pickwick, which is like a 7-Eleven. It's like a convenience store. So this one, it was walkable. Like it was at the very end of our neighborhood. You had to like exit out of the, you know, little welcome pillars into our neighborhood. And then there was like a busy, like a main street that our neighborhood kind of emptied out on. And that was on, this Pickwick was on the corner. And we would walk down there and get candy. And when we were in middle school, the cigarettes were still in front of the counter right underneath the cash register, like the little counter area where the people would check you out. And they were facing they weren't behind anything. They were just like right there at where the gum is now, like in a lot of places, right? Like that's where the cigarettes were. So yeah, my friends and I used to shoplift cigarettes when we were in middle school.
Joe Camel cartoon, and it spoke to your young mind, and it was positioned just at eye level.
Marble menthols. Always marble menthols. Well, marble lights. I think some of my friends didn't like the menthols. But yeah, we were super naughty, probably starting in around 7th grade. That was like something, you know, there were people kind of dabbling in that and trying like, oh, smoking is bad, let's smoke. Well, so I got two tropes in one here, because not only did we shoplift, but we used to shoplift cigarettes.
Yes, double whammy with the smoking and the shoplifting. And you're also speaking exactly to the whole like prohibition thing, you know, like you make it illegal, you tell them they can't do it, and they're just going to steal it, and you get more mischief. Yeah, I am the kind of person that gets nervous walking through the detector things on my way out of the
just
store,
in case something,
without having even taken anything.
You're Danny Partridge in this.
Yeah, walking nice and slow, just in case anyone wants to stop and ask me any questions. I'm fully open, you know, accessed for everybody. Yeah, I don't think I ever did anything. I remember learning the word shoplifting from my local video video store when I was a kid, they would have these little handwritten signs everywhere that would say shoplifters will be prosecuted, and asking my parents what that was and learning, okay, well, I'll never do that. And yeah, you know, the 90s was big on that. All the stores would have signs like that. The Exile on Main Street, the local record shop, would always have these things that would say like, shoplift from the corporate bastards down the street. Don't take from us, man. And so, yeah, I feel like the only memory I can scare up that's anything like this is my friend Dennis and I had a scheme that the local pizza place that had little coupons on their pizza boxes that said, you know, cut this out and return 10 of them
coupons?
And you'll get a free pizza. We said, like, what if we call them and say we're doing a school project and we need lots of pizza boxes, and then we cut out the coupons and redeem them for free pizza. And I think I mentioned that to my dad, and he gave me one of those like, well, if you think that's right, then that's what you can do. And I think I never did it.
Yeah, because you were like, oh, wow, that's bad. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Much
story.
like we'll learn in some of these episodes, you know, leaving kids to their own devices or sort of giving them enough rope to hang themselves with in terms of guilt can sometimes be all you need. So let's get into the Partridge family. This is our second time talking about the Partridges. We talked about them in our camping episode.
Yes.
And I loved this. I remember I was pleasantly surprised the first time we watched the Partridge family. I thought this was really good and really funny. Like, I was scribbling down a lot of the lines they said. And I think a big part of it is because this episode is all about Danny, the youngest boy, and he is the best.
Oh, he's all personality. And they give him these crazy one-liners. Like when he's feeling guilty later on, he's like, what's next for me? And he starts listing all these things. And the last thing he says is, loose women?
Yeah,
and I'm just like, you're 11.
Him and the writers writing for him are onto the same thing as little Gary Coleman in different strokes. You get this really sort of hammy, precocious kid, and you just give him stuff that grown-ups say. Just tell him, I've been meaning to cut down ever since my 40s or whatever, and people will crack up. And yeah, that's what it is. Just give him lots of adultish lines to say, and he sells it. He's just really funny.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this starts with Danny and his friend. They're in a store.
Named Punky.
His friend wants him to steal a yo-yo. They want to steal yo-yos.
Well, his friend just is like, yeah, we don't have enough money. I'll take one. And Danny's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And he's like looking around and freaking out. Yeah. And his friend Punky's like, bro, chill out. You know, he didn't say that, but you know, because it's the 70s. But he's like, bro, chill out. What are you, chicken? You can't do it? And
that's when the peer pressure takes over. Danny says, again, speaking about the lines, you know, that are written for an adult, he goes, oh, I could take one anytime I want. I just don't feel like I'm in the yo-yo mood, you know, so he's talking about like quitting cigarettes or something. And then, his friend goes, face it, some guys, they just don't have what it takes, you know. So this is really taking me back to that Different Strokes smoking episode. That whole like, let me show you how it is. Let me show you what the cool guys do. So he ends up succumbing to the peer pressure, right? And they both take the yo-yos.
Yeah, they both hide yo-yos in their pockets, and then they go to head out, and then the pharmacist guy, the guy who runs the corner store, knows Danny by name, knows his family. Like, the kids kind of go in there and get little...
Phelps.
Yeah, go in there and get little treats after school. It was reminding me of that, like, the first Charlie and the Chocolate Factory
Yes, the Candyman song. Totally.
Or just that store where it's like the kid, you know, he knows all the kids.
It's that kind of place, that old-timey, like, shop with an E.
With an E. They've got the pharmacy in the back, but in the front, it's all like, you know, stuff like little candies and
maybe
toys and other
barbershop
things.
next door.
Right.
Yeah, and he calls him over to say, oh, hey, me and this lady were trying to decide on a present for her kid or whatever. It's like either
her
this
nephew
thing,
who's around your age.
Yeah, this thing or a yo-yo.
A boomerang or a yo-yo. That's right.
This just definite recurring trope of this, and this is going to be really funny throughout the episode, the sort of guilty conscience thing, you know. So Danny goes, oh, kids my age, they hate yo-yoing. It's way too tangly.
Yeah, and I wouldn't take a yo-yo if you gave it to me.
Yes, very, very funny. And it's also funny that yo-yoing is on the rise now. My nephew was into yo-yoing.
That's right. That's
So,
like the speed yo-yo and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you got to think this would have been at the time when the Smothers Brothers are on TV and everything. And this was probably one of several little upticks throughout the generations that yo-yos have had.
Have
in the
hula
culture.
hoops had that same rise and fall, or did they just have a peak and then they just became like a thing that you have at PE?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like in our lifetime, there hasn't ever been a big hula hoop craze.
I don't think so.
But as we sort of move on, we get into this other story that's going on. Keith, the older brother, is reading an article back home about how the Partridge family, they're going to be the first ever 6-person recipient of the local citizenship award.
The Good Citizen Award, but Good Citizenship Award because there's 6 of them.
Yeah, so this is going to be the thing that's kind of running in the background. Yeah, we get more of that comedy of Danny when she asks him, like, oh, what did you do? The mom asks him, what did you do today or something? He has this line item alibi where he's like, oh, from 2:45 to 3:15, I played basketball. And from 3:15 to 3:30, I walked with, Punky to the store or whatever. And just
and
very
then we
funny.
listen to albums, 7 of them. Would you like the titles?
Yeah. And it just, this kid actor sells all of this to me. He's just so much funnier than the rest of them. He's wearing this polka dot shirt the whole time that looks like cartoon boxer shorts. I was going to
say, it looks like measles.
And so later on, they're at dinner, right? And he has this full-on, like, Telltale Heart-esque outburst where just, apropos of nothing, he's just like, oh, you've gotten the best of me with your trick words and, I can't stand it any longer. I must confess. And he tells them all about how he stole the yo-yo and everything. And it's a weird, like, as I'm watching it, I'm going like, oh, we're sitcoms just much shorter.
Yeah, because it did. I felt the same way. It was like they solved the issue kind of like right away. Yeah. So I was like, well, what's going to be the conflict in the show? Oh no, is only like a kicking off point? Like, oh, is there going to be a B plot? Like, what else is happening? But then they took it to the next level with his crazy guilt. And this is where I felt like, is this just all, like, do all little redheaded boys have a good conscience like you? Is he you?
Yeah,
he was like, his guilt and his anxiety were so overwhelming that he just like goes inside himself and is like, I'm the worst and everyone hates me and no one can trust me and I'm a criminal. I'm just a criminal.
Well, hang on. I think there's an extra beat there. When he first returns this yo-yo and kind of like resolves the question, he becomes like self-righteous. And there's this whole middle point where he's walking around telling everybody like, oh, don't forget everybody, I'm extremely courageous and virtuous.
Honest.
Yeah, yes. He goes around lecturing everybody. His brother and sister they're trying to write music for their next, gig or whatever. And Keith goes like, oh, hey, what if we reuse that same riff we wrote last time? And Danny immediately jumps in. Oh, I don't think that's right. You can't, and starts like lecturing them about stealing. And he's going around, just kind of like, with this whole self-aggrandizing notion.
Right.
He's walking around with Punky going, oh, it takes great courage to do what I did. You got to understand that. So that's the whole middle phase. That comes crashing down when they get caught for stealing again.
Right. So Punky decides to take some perfume for his mom's birthday from the store. And Danny has said, hey, I'm here to buy this fancy shampoo for my mom.
Yeah.
And so the pharmacist guy goes in the back to get the fancy shampoo. And that's when Punky steals something. And then the guy catches Punky. And then he blames Danny and is like, you are the one who sent me into the back. Yeah. You didn't learn your lesson. You're getting sneakier. And he writes their names on a card, on 2 cards and says, you're going in the file. Yeah. You guys aren't allowed in here anymore.
Banned for life from Mr. Phelps' store. Yeah, I loved his system of writing your name on a card and putting it in the file. And he's like, after all that soul searching you did yesterday, and now you're aiding and abetting, and he's kind of right. Like his shampoo task made the perfect, and that's sort of a running theme throughout a lot of these episodes. Like whatever your friend does, you're basically complicit in it.
Right.
And so, they're banned for life. And that's what sets Danny off on this whole, like, oh, I'm a bad seed.
Right.
I'm rotten to the core.
Yes.
This episode is called The Partridge Connection, which I assume is a reference to the French Connection that probably came out, a few years earlier.
That's about a heist, right?
Well, it's about detectives busting up like a drug ring. So I don't think it's really that solid of a connection other than that was just considered like a really sort of gritty, intense like police drama, I think. And so I think that's what they're going for. Yeah, the mom back home gets a phone call, and it's the police sergeant going, yeah, we've got your kid in, your kid's here. He's confessed to everything he's ever thought about. He's just walked
and he
around.
won't go home. He says this is his home now.
Yeah. He says, we told him to go home. He says this is his home. And so, yeah, he's really like, I'm no good. Like the whole family takes up the goal of like, we have to convince Danny that he's okay.
That he's not a bad kid.
Yeah, and I love that they have the most sitcom-y plan and it doesn't work.
Right, because they're talking, like everybody's tried talking to him and he won't listen. And so they said the only way he's going to learn is if he is tempted and then he chooses not to steal. And so when he's tempted and chooses not to, then we can point to that and say, see, you didn't do it. So they leave things all around the house that he might want to steal. And then
all of their wallets.
Their wallets and one of the
and we don't get to see any
doll.
of this, which to me, this would have been a fun sitcom scene. It doesn't require any other locations. Why not show us this? Show us planting the wallets for him to steal. That would be funny.
And him seeing them and then doing something.
Yeah, we don't get any of that.
That feels too Brady Bunch. This is the Partridge.
It's a little Charles in Charge-esque, but yeah.
And so then the next scene is that all the kids except Danny sitting down with the mom and being like, we were wrong. Like, he is a thief. We put all these things all around the house for him to find and tempt him. And he was tempted and he stole everything. And then he comes in the room with a shoebox and he's like, if you wanted to test me, you should have been smarter than that. Here's your wallet. Here's your wallet. Here's your wallet.
I guess he just wanted them to go on the same emotional roller coaster. Because it's like, if you want to... If you're onto them, then don't steal the stuff in the first place. I know. Don't steal it and then give it back to them. I don't know what the thought process was. I think the thought process is like, oh, you're screwing with me, I'm screwing with you. I'll give you this mindfuck thing where you think I've stolen something and then it turns out I knew it all along. He's like, I don't know what to do. He just feels like he's lost the trust of everybody, including himself. And so he basically runs away from home. Again, another sort of subtrope we're going to get.
Yeah, he just doesn't come home from school one day. Same thing that happened with the police, but he just doesn't come home from school one day and they're supposed to go to this benefit that night where they're getting this award and they're all ready to go.
Yeah. I want to say just on the getting ready thing, I loved when the little boy comes down. It is me against the world in the 21st century. This thing of wearing sneakers with a suit, like every CEO does now, or just every person. And so I loved it when the little boy comes down the stairs to go to the award ceremony, and the mom goes, "You're not going to a basketball game. Put on some real shoes." Because he's wearing sneakers with his nice suit. Yeah. And I'm like, yes. When did we lose sight of this? Anyway.
Jay, who doesn't change out of PJs all day, every day.
That's because nobody's seeing me. I'm not going to go to an awards show like that.
The one time you get to dress up, you're like, yeah, I don't mind. If you were wearing a suit every single day, you'd also want to wear sneakers.
I guess, but I don't think it's that. It's the actual style that just because I'm stuck in the 70s, I guess, annoys me. Match nice shoes with nice clothes. Anyway, yeah, they're all ready to go to the award ceremony. And again, the mom gets a call. This time it's from the family friend.
It's the
Ruben?
manager. Yeah, it's their manager, Ruben. And he's pretending that he's calling the mechanic shop.
Yes.
And Shirley's like, "Oh no, you've made a mistake. Ruben, it's me, it's Shirley." And he's like, "Oh no, it's definitely the brakes." And that's when she realizes, oh, is Danny there? And then Danny gets up and goes in the other room. And then he's like, yeah, he says he's not coming. He says he doesn't deserve the award. And she's like, well, see what you can do. And then he's like, yep, okay, definitely the brakes. Maybe I'll try your shop next week. Okay, bye. And hangs up. And Danny's like, so was my mom mad?
Yeah, Danny, obviously very precocious, as we've established. So he says something like, "You're not Laurence Olivier, buddy."
Yeah, it's like, Laurence Olivier, you are not.
Yeah, exactly. So Ruben convinces him, "Come on, go to the award ceremony." First of all, this is another one of those shows, we're still back in the 70s. It's that kind of like hybrid, like single camera with the fake audience type thing, like kind of neither fish nor fowl. But we get like a nice, big, crowded room for this award ceremony.
Yes.
And because, they're getting ready to do a performance and everything, just nice, 60s, early 70s vibe here. And, the rest of the family is on stage to accept the award. Danny comes in with his like cool Mo-D sunglasses,
yes.
Those sunglasses that are like all
wrap
one
around.
piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they like kind of wrap around the side of the face.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's just standing there aloofly in the background while the mom accepts the award, or begins to accept the citizenship award that is being presented to the Partridge family, the band / family.
Right. She says, "The family took a vote, and I'm sorry I can't accept this award. There's one member in our family who should be accepting this, and I'm going to call him up here right now." And so she calls out Danny, and he like takes off his sunglasses, and the whole audience is applauding, and he comes up and he's like, "Well, for the first time in my life, I'm speechless."
Yeah, this is another one of those things, the way you give stakes to or resolve a story like this is through some sort of public speaking.
Right.
Somebody's got to be called upon to get up and give a speech. And yeah, I don't even really remember what he says.
No,
right?
he just was like, "I'm speechless." And then they're like, "Okay, thanks." And then they go play a song.
Yeah, they play a song. Now, I wonder if this is why they had that random joke where he talks about loose women, because the song that they play is a total non sequitur. It's got nothing to do with like, "Don't steal my love" or "You've shoplifted my heart."
No.
This is all about getting together with a promiscuous woman with a checkered past.
Yes, and that by the way is being sung by like the teenage son and his like 9 and 10 and 11-year-old and 16-year-old brother and sister.
I have to say, by the way, I try to keep my thoughts to myself when we're watching the shows, but when they cut to that little girl, I said out loud, "Who the fuck is that?" Because we have not seen the poor youngest sisters on every damn sitcom. They just forget about them for the whole show.
Well, they had the joke with the doll because she didn't have a wallet.
All right, so I guess, yeah, and I'm sure she was at the dinner table, but she just makes no impression at all of this. I really was surprised when they cut to her. Yeah, they're singing a song. The Keith, the older brother / lead singer, says, "I don't care if I'm not the first. I just want to be the last." He keeps talking. He rhymes that with like, "They're always talking about your shady past."
Yes,
it's this weird song that's all about.
Super creepy.
You've been around the block, but that's okay with me.
Why are you all singing this? You're a family band.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is supposed to be, that time period or whatever, like free love, like, hey, we're not a bunch of squares that are hung up on like.
I'm sure the city leaders wouldn't appreciate it.
Yeah, and that is true. I didn't even think about how it coincides with their citizenship award. But yeah, it is very funny. And then, I kind of thought that would be the end, but we do have the button where, the family is back home and the kids are going, "Mom, did you ever steal anything?" As she's like folding up the laundry. And she takes out the towel with the hotel logo.
Yeah, Danny does. Danny's like, "Are you sure about that?" And then they hold up like, it said like Calypso Hotel on it.
So yeah, look, in terms of tracking the trope, obviously, like we said, it's going to be about a kid learning his lesson, being plagued by guilt. We're going to have that in all of these. And it's interesting how in almost all these episodes, the motivation for stealing is some combination of, and the later ones are going to be buying a present or stealing a present. We don't have that, but we have the peer pressure. So there's always something to sort of take the guilt or like mitigate the guilt off of the character. They're either doing it for an altruistic reason or they're pressured by their, their less moral friend. I just want to kind of...
Yeah, except for Joe, who is the one who's like, yep, stealing.
Yeah, no, I guess that's
and
true.
Also the robot.
Well, but she's getting a present, you know, and so we'll get to that. There's always something that kind of, except for maybe Home Improvement, there's always something that's like, well, that just kind of tries to keep us on the thief's side more than if they were just like, oh yeah, I wanted it, you know?
Yeah, just to understand about like why kids do things.
Yeah, to make it a dilemma rather than just like they had this idea to do something bad.
That they were bad, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to Facts of Life.
Season 2, Episode 6, Shoplifting.
Yeah, so Facts of Life is old hat at this point. We've covered it a handful of times. We saw Tootie learn how to drive. We saw Natalie contemplate losing her virginity. I feel like this is one of the earlier episodes we've watched, even though I know it's not super early in the run, but everyone looks much younger.
Oh, it is definitely the earliest episode we've watched.
Because we've been stuck with the late ones. Yeah.
We've watched a lot more of the later ones where it's kind of hard to believe that they're actually teenagers.
Yeah.
They still have them in high school in some of them, and then in the later ones, they have them in college. But yeah, this one is still early days. This is actually the first season that Joe is in the show because remember that first season, they had like a cast of thousands. Like Molly Ringwald was in the show in season 1, and it was like a full-on dorm where they just had tons of girls. And then at the end of season 1, they narrowed the cast down to 5 people, 4 of the original girls, and then they added in Joe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I guess at this point, I have to accept it's full-on Mandela effect false memory that she went around always wearing a leather jacket because she never wears that. I love her baseball tees that she wears throughout this episode. I've always liked that look. Just her overall style. A+ for me, even without the leather jacket. Well, and she
sounds like you. Like, this is still early days where she's still talking like this.
Yeah, no, she's got the heavy, New York accent or whatever it's supposed to be, and I guess I just filled in the leather jacket in my mind, and this is going to be one of those episodes that does focus on her as a catalyst for the plot. Like I said, this is a birthday present one where we're finding out that it's Mrs. Garrett's birthday, and tying into our trope from last week, she's been on a diet. And so she's happy that she's lost all this weight. She feels more alive than ever.
She had her season 2 glow up.
Yeah. I guess this is probably a real thing. The actress lost weight. And so, we get this sort of socioeconomic dynamic within the friend group, because Blair is going to not want to chip in for Mrs. Garrett's present, right?
No, she's like, I was born with good taste. I'm going to buy my own present. You all can get something else.
Yes, which I have to admit, I have been this person once or twice. But I just remember like there were certain times where I would have like an idea of like a present for like a close friend. And then a bunch of people would be like, oh, hey, let's all chip in and get this thing. And I kind of felt like, oh, like that's fine for like, some random person whose party we're going to. But like, I actually had this thing that I was going to do.
Yeah, I had an idea.
But anyway.
For Blair, it's not really that she has an idea.
No.
She's just like, I'm going to spend a certain amount of money because that's what I do, because I'm rich, and happy to put your names on it, but no, you don't get any input into the decision making. Yeah. Like, I'm going to decide I have good taste and you don't. Yeah,
and it's going to be a running thing throughout the whole show that Blair's sort of snottiness about style kind of like, she just kind of disagrees with everything that everybody likes.
Right.
But anyway, that leaves Joe, Tootie, and Natalie to do the old like, oh, well, I've got $4.10 from my allowance, and my Aunt Bertha gave me 37 cents, and they're pooling their money, and they go to this department store.
They've seen an advertisement. They overheard Mrs. Garrett say that she wants a Hawaiian shirt.
Yes, a Hawaiian blouse, that's a phrase I wasn't super familiar with.
But it's not like a Hawaiian shirt like you or I would call like, oh, it's Hawaiian Shirt Tuesday or whatever. No, it's more just like a wild print.
Yeah, like it
remember Jams?
Yes.
shorts that it has that kind of like wild print.
Yeah, it's more, I think we think of Hawaiian shirts as like a repeating pattern.
Right.
And this is more of like one big crazy sort of tropical design.
Right. And it's like abstract art more than anything else. It's just wild colors.
Yeah, I feel like there's a suggestion of like a palm leaf or something, but yeah, it's so sort of large that it doesn't look like a bunch
I didn't
of
see that
coconut
at all.
trees or something.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no flowers or anything like that. It's just like very kind of 80s sort of angular wild colors.
Yeah. So
anyway, so they saw this advertisement, or Mindy, that's her real name. Natalie saw the advertisement that said that this department store is having a half off sale on these Hawaiian type blouses. So they're like, great. We have $15. We can go these, if these blouses are half off, we can afford one. So they take their money, they go there, and this rude ass sales lady, she's like the sales lady from Legally Blonde.
I was going to say Pretty Woman. She told me Pretty Woman, sir. She said, the clothes for the likes of you are upstairs.
Yes, she's so rude. So, well, she's like, you kids can, yours is on the third floor. And they're like, no, we're buying a present. And she's like, great. Like, she just can't stand them.
Yeah.
And so they find the shirt that they want, and then they go to take it to her, and she's like, okay, that's $30. And they're like, no, it's half off. And she was like, that sale ended yesterday. And Natalie's like, but I just saw the ad yesterday. And she's like, I don't know what to tell you. It was a one-day sale. And Natalie's like, but it didn't say that in the ad. And so they felt like they were like bait and switch, and they were feeling very scandalized, and this woman's being such a bitch to them.
Well, can I also mention, this is the second of Natalie's political jokes in the first 10 minutes of this show. In the first scene, when the girls are bickering, she goes, you two fight so well. Have you ever thought of becoming Middle East countries? Okay.
It's 1980. It's this aired December 31st, 1980. On New Year's Eve. It's an election year.
Yeah, I know what it's referring to, but it is just funny. It's like, was this Murphy Brown or Facts of Life?
I guess it's the year after the election, but yeah.
And then here in the store, when this lady is like dicking them around, she goes, ma'am, have you ever heard of Ralph Nader? She goes, does the name Ralph Nader mean anything to you? Which I guess he was into the like consumer protections and stuff like that. I think of him as like the Green Party, like more...
Me too.
Environmentalism stuff, but
he was a businessman. That's kind of all I remember. I don't know. I didn't really get the joke.
Ralph Nader, hot on the lips of Natalie on the Facts of Life. And so, they're all feeling pretty put out by this, the store is too expensive. They're not honoring the sale. And then Joe says, it doesn't have to cost anything. And this is going to be the first and not the last time where we hear the audible gasps and titters of the studio audience as they start to catch on to what's about to go down here.
Right. Tootie and Natalie are scandalized. They're like, you don't mean.
It takes them a long time.
That can't actually, wait a minute. You're what? And
Joe has to say like 7 different things.
To get them to understand.
Shall we say, take it without paying. Yeah. Like they're still not getting it.
They're like, what do you mean? So she's like, I'm going to go find a dressing room and you guys just, hang out here and browse. And so they both are like, she's not really going to do it. There's no way she's really going to do it.
Tootie goes, we're going to be accessories. And the other one goes,
Natalie says
that. Tootie goes, how can we be accessories? We're in the sportswear department.
Yes.
Rim shot. Good one.
Exactly. So then Joe comes back out. She doesn't have the shirt on her. And Tootie's like, oh, thank goodness.
But
she's
decided.
Walking
in a super weird way.
Yeah, she is. You can tell it's like under her, kind of like she's wearing it underneath her other clothes. And so she puts her arms around the two girls, and Tootie's like, oh, thank goodness you didn't bring it with you. And then Natalie's like, you've got a tag hanging out above your collar. And she's like, and tucks it away. And then we get the same beat that we get as the boys are heading out of the pharmacy. We get it here. The security guard is like, ladies, excuse me, girls. And they're like, frozen.
Right out of Hitchcock. Yeah, the old, excuse me. And then just like, oh, well, you need to know to use the other exit because there's construction there.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. And they scurry off to the other exit. But we get to feel that like moment of, terror that we're about to be caught with them.
Yeah. Back home, Blair gives Mrs. Garrett the Gucci bag that she bought for her birthday.
Fucking fancy. She pulls that out and I was like, that's a Gucci bag. Like, she's no joke. And then Blair's response is, and the good thing about it is that the price just keeps going up. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then, the rest of the girls give her the Hawaiian shirt that she asks for. We've got lots of little sitcom-y, dramatic irony type stuff here where, one of them, or where Mrs. Garrett says, you shouldn't have. And Tootie says, you can say that again.
Yep.
They're all like struggling with the guilt of having
except for Joe,
who is still just sort of like either, I'm not going to say a sociopath. I think she's got it in her mind.
She's the badass, right? Yeah. She's like, that store tried to rip us off. We ripped them off right back.
She's just so indignant about this phony sale or the saleswoman's dismissing of them that she's just like, I'm not going to feel bad about this.
It's Aldrin Justice from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, and so Natalie and Tootie are doing that same sort of oversharing thing that Danny did, that same sort of like nervous, supplying way too much information every time Mrs. Garrett asked them about something. And then Mrs. Garrett gets the idea, heavily encouraged by Blair, to exchange the shirt at the store for a different size or a different shirt.
Yeah. Blair wants her to exchange it for a whole different shirt. Mrs. Garrett is like, actually, I should probably just exchange it because it's too big. So she takes it back to the store. The minute she walks in the store and hands it to the lady, that same nasty sales lady, like, flags the security guy and points at her and is like, that's the shirt. That's her. Like, she knows the one shirt that's gone missing.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I was confused about this and kind of bouncing back and forth because she shows up. First, she says to the sales lady, I want to return this shirt. And at first, I was incredulous. Like, this lady is not going to remember, kind of like Al does in the later episode. She's not going to be abreast of one shirt being missing.
Right.
Which is at first what it seems like.
And that then is right.
Right. And then she goes, oh, if you don't have the receipt, let me look through my receipts. And she started acting more cordial.
No, she's stalling for time.
Right.
She is like telling the guy from the beginning, follow her around.
I think that's, I guess, what we're ultimately supposed to conclude. For a second, I thought, oh, no, this does make sense. She is actually looking through the receipts to see what's what. And then we get the introduction of another great recurring subtrope, the retail store detective.
That's right.
The security officer who is played by the guy that plays Mort Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld's dad.
Dick
already
O'Neill.
Pretty old already at this point.
Yeah.
And just like the one we're going to get later on in Small Wonder, the sort of like older guy in a like frumpy trench coat.
But it's so funny because, like, Mrs. Garrett, obviously, she doesn't know that this is stolen. She just, she is like, oh, I'm, so good looking now because I've lost all this weight.
Yes.
And this man's coming over, just like hovering around her, very interested in the blouses that she's looking at. Asking lots of questions. And so she finally just stops and she's like, are you trying to pick me up?
Yes.
And he's like, in a manner of speaking.
Yes. That is one of like 10 little exchanges. Very, very sitcom-y. The standard, the two people don't understand the premise of the conversation they're having.
No. He's purposefully like leading her on like that.
Oh, yeah. He's being coy and not coming out with, I'm about to arrest you. He's sort of like studying what she says and sizing her up and being, he's getting ready to kind of like
and also flirting with her, which is funny.
And she's in full flirtation mode. Like you said,
he's like, why don't you
oblivious.
come with me? And she's like, I think we're going to have maybe a dinner some other time. I'm not coming with you right now. Like, oh my goodness.
And there is this clear, like, sort of sexual tension. And just like you said, are you trying to pick me up? Well, I guess you could say that. And then he straight up arrests her and we cut, act break, go to commercial. And then, we're back. We don't get to see her in jail. She comes back home.
No, because she's in mall jail.
Yeah. She doesn't get set to prison or anything.
Have you ever been in the mall jail? Have you ever seen that area?
Well, my mom worked behind the scenes at a mall. I never saw a jail. I never saw any
It was like a holding room.
Yeah, I think I saw places in the mall where the general public wasn't allowed to go, but no jails.
Yeah, there was At the end of the food court by the bathrooms in the mall that was like right by my house growing up, there was like the area where the mall cops, that was like their office.
Yeah.
So like when they weren't roaming around, that was like where they could get coffee or, interview people or hold little, ne'er-do-well children who have been shoplifting and caught and call their parents. And so we always used to laugh at that place and we would call it mall jail and we'd make fun of the mall cops. But we always used to tease each other like, oh, yeah, you're going to go to mall jail, which was like a room.
Yeah. I mean, and now at this point, I feel like most stores have the policy to not do anything with shoplifters,
Right, because everybody's allowed to fucking pack heat.
Yeah, and exactly. They don't want to create unsafe situations. But anyway, she comes home and we have more of this sort of guilt trip, she basically plays dumb with the girls, right, to get them to sort of break down and confess. Yeah,
well, she comes in and she's like, oh, I went back to the store, girls. She has that weird sort of lilting voice.
Yeah.
Oh, girls, I went back to the store. You went back to the store? Oh, my gosh. Why? Why would you do that? Oh, well, Blair helped me see that I needed to maybe exchange. And I decided to exchange the shirt, not just for one in a different size, but for a completely different one. And you'll never guess what happened. And they were all like, oh, no, why would you do that? Why would you, Blair? Why would you do that? And then they came clean. Natalie and Tootie were like, we stole it. We stole the shirt. And then Joe was like, no, it wasn't. Please don't blame them. Like, I convinced them it was all my idea. I stole the shirt. They were just there with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and eventually, Mrs. Garrett is going to say, well, your names are on the gift. You were part of this whole caper, she puts it. And so they get some punishment too. The main punishment is going to be Mrs. Garrett explains, oh, I bought the shirt. I put it on layaway. And Joe, you're going to work at Harrison's on the weekend and pay it back. And yeah, it's interesting watching this last scene when everything comes out in the open and how Blair kind of stands apart from this whole thing. I sort of feel the same way about like the racial stuff we were talking about with Nell Carter's show, where it's like, it's not that they don't get that this is an aspect of it. It's built into the story. And I still wonder if they the writers of the show, fully get the suggestions and implications of having this one character like completely avoid this whole dilemma and literally not be part of the show, like not have to learn that lesson because of her affluence.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny the way it's showing like, yeah, this is a whole journey that some of us have to go on, wanting to buy a present and not being able to afford it and having to wrestle with the morality. And then some of us like Blair just sidestep the whole issue by being rich.
Because I'm wealthy, so I didn't have to learn this lesson of not stealing. I mean, it definitely could be that. I do know in later episodes, like we talked about with the Losing Your Virginity episode, that was a storyline that was written for Blair. And because of her like deep Christian beliefs, she was like, I won't do it and you can't make me do it. And so they rewrote it for Natalie. I mean, this is still probably too early and Blair's probably too young to be like, no, I'm not doing the shoplifting story. Yeah.
Well, and that would be pretty extreme. I mean, at that point,
yeah, how do you make that happen when she has money?
Yeah, well, just also, if you're a sitcom actor and you're refusing to even do a, like, I got caught stealing a present storyline.
I mean, there's a bunch of storylines in the later season that she's like, nope, 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 nope. She noped out of a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why you've got all these different characters. And of course, the ironic thing is she just comes across as more of a villain than anybody.
Right, I know.
By being so snotty. It ends with Mrs. Garrett saying, it's not all bad. I've got a date with that hot security guard.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Once he realized I wasn't a thief, he asked me out.
Yeah. So definite subtrope there with the, older people getting together with the security guards.
Yeah, we're going to see that again in Small Wonder. It was way creepier in Small Wonder, but everything's way creepier in Small Wonder.
Yeah, we're going to have all of that stuff, the present angle, the security guard, everything. So yeah, let's do it. Let's move on to Small Wonder.
Season 2, Episode 11, The Shoplifter.
Yeah, I just realized an interesting coincidence that I mentioned before. The only time we've ever talked about the Partridge Family was on our camping episode, and that is also the case for Small Wonder.
Oh, yeah,
this is our
that's
second
right.
time talking about little Vicky and family.
Still the best
time.
actor in the show.
Boy, I don't know how you make that determination.
Well, because they're all horrible, and she is just like, I am a robot.
I'm going to say now what I'm sure I said then. I think Small Wonder is in contention for one of the worst sitcoms of all time. I know.
It's so bad.
We have to, grade on a curve. This was a Saturday morning sitcom. It's meant for kids. It's meant to be disposable.
Right, but okay, so put it up next to something like Saved by the Bell.
I mean, yeah, obviously. I don't know what
Or
you
Punky
could
Brewster.
compare this to.
Or Silver Spoons.
That would make it look good. You're right. Silver Spoons to me is also pretty bad, but yeah, this, like I said, it's the worst. And to be honest, a big part of it, I mean, look, none of them are winning any awards for charisma.
No, the acting is really broad, but that's fine for a kid's sitcom, right? But you just take that and then you give them like bad storylines and little talent.
And to me, I think it is the characterization of Vicky that makes it worse. And I know I'm sort of just like being a grump about the whole concept there, but I guess for one thing, I'm wondering, at what point was it decided that robots talk like this? Did Vicky actually invent this? Because if so, it is pretty impressive. Like,
no,
Hal doesn't talk like that.
Isn't it from like Star Trek or something? Like
Data doesn't talk like that.
No, but he's not a robot. He's a whatever they are.
There were no characters that were robots in the original
What
one.
is the,
Maybe Robbie the robot from Lost in Space.
That's what I was going to say. Lost in
Danger
Space.
Will Rogers. Yeah,
Yes.
maybe that's
Will
where it comes from.
Robinson, not
Yeah.
Rogers. Rogers is the Broadway guy. Yep.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, like it's funny because now that we're in a world where we have robots and computers and things that talk to us, none of them talk like this.
What are you talking about? When I talk to Siri, she's like, how can I help you?
No, they've all got this eerily placid tone. It's always, I can look that up for you. I can help you with that. They don't, have that like sharp, I don't know, whatever it is. I was never won over by that. Just, I mean, we're arguing with something that's not meant to withstand any scrutiny whatsoever.
But again, I said this the first time we watched Little Wonder or Small Wonder. We don't have on display her fun comedic timing with the like rawr that she did last time.
Oh,
like,
yes, which that didn't really win me over.
Made me laugh pretty hard. She was like, she had fun with that. This, she's almost like a tertiary character in this episode. Like she really doesn't do, like she doesn't say anything.
Well, no,
but
she
I mean,
doesn't
she's
say
like,
much.
she doesn't say anything. She's kind of there, but like she's not the center. She's the one causing the problem, and then everybody else is sort of running around trying to fix it.
Yeah.
But she's not speaking very much.
No, I mean, I think that's kind of par for the course. Vicky's a lady of few words.
I mean, that wasn't true last year or the last time we watched this, though.
All right, let's get into it. This is called The Shoplifter, and this is going to begin with the family sitting around the breakfast table. Hilarious joke about the dad saying, "Can I have coffee, please?" And Vicky pouring coffee directly onto his newspaper.
Well, she was trying to pour him a cup of coffee, but he was like hovered over his coffee cup. She tried around the back. She tried around the front. He didn't notice her like going back and forth around him.
I think I
He's
didn't
like
notice
completely just like enthralled in this article about kids shoplifting. So she's like, all right, that looks like a ramp that's going right into the cup to me. So she pours the coffee in the top of the newspaper and it runs down the crease and goes into his cup. It looks really gross because the coffee, as it's being poured, the brown liquid on the newspaper starts to look green as it's pouring into his cup. And I was just imagining the newsprint taste.
Yeah, and it's also probably like a fake newspaper, maybe. I don't know. But newspapers are not made to withstand any liquid, at any temperature.
No, they're perfect for paper mache.
Yeah, this article is going to be this like moral panic that shoplifting is on the rise and that teenagers are responsible for like, $4.7 billion in merchandise being stolen every year. And yeah, they're just like, it is this like little topic and everyone's kind of given their little thoughts. And the little boy says something like, oh, it's happening at school too. If you're not careful, they'll take the lint out of your belly button.
Right.
And yeah, everyone has their little lines. And of course, Vicky is soaking this all in because standard small wonder plot structure. She is going to, despite being a computer that is so advanced as to be, indistinguishable from a human being, manages to like absorb information and deploy it in all of the most like problem causing ways.
Right. Because what she picks up from the conversation is that kids shoplift and she is supposed to be pretending to be a kid. So when they go to the store, so that the boy, Jamie or whatever his name is, can get a birthday present for her.
Yes.
Because there's this weird sort of plot twist where the woman from Child and Family Services who helped them with the adoption, because they're faking that she's a real child.
Let's slow down here and make sure we grasp
all the intricacies of this interesting plot.
The woman shows up. She looks to me like Grace from Annie. She's got that same, when Grace first shows up at the orphanage.
Yes, it's exactly what she looks like. She's got the like 1930s kind of tilted hat and a really nice, like she's tall and slender and she's got this like nice trim coat that has like, it's like an overcoat but it's, like wool or something. It's like a nice one. And she's got the tie around the waist. I mean, her outfit, like she looked super stylish. I was like, I would wear that. Thank you very much. I wish hats came back for women. I would wear them all the time. And so, but she looks great. But the mom and dad are freaking out because they're like, what is she doing here? And she's like, oh, it's been a year and I stopped by because we like to drop in and check on the children. Are you keeping up your teaching credentials? Because you're homeschooling Vicky at home because she's too shy for school. And so the parents are like, oh my gosh, all those lies we told on the paperwork. Is she here to check that out?
This is what I need to understand. So the dad invented Vicky, right? Like he made her.
Right.
And then so the idea is they went to an adoption agency to facilitate.
Nope.
Okay.
The Department of Children and Families got called because there was a random new child in their house.
Suddenly 11 years old.
And the neighbor, the little neighbor girl, and she's very nosy, her busybody mom.
Harriet.
Yeah, you've got Harriet, but who's a busybody, but you have busybody mom, right? They called DCF because they had this weird little kid hanging around who wasn't in school. So they had to produce all this paperwork that she was like a niece or something. And this all happened in like other episodes. And they're just sort of like, oh, yeah, remember when that happened? And that's all we know about it is that they made up a bunch of fake paperwork. This lady helped them adopt, in quotes,
so she's
this
just
child.
part of the bureaucracy that helped them get the paperwork done.
And so she's coming back. And then we find out that the reason that she's there is actually it's Vicky's birthday.
Yes.
And the family's like, it's Vicky's birthday?
Now, this is where I just have to take a breath and say, again, Saturday morning, made for children. Like, there's no reason for a 45-year-old man in his basement to be criticizing the legitimacy of this show. Because, it is just so absurd. It is the most sitcom-y conversation we have ever witnessed when this mom and dad first don't know or don't catch on that this woman is telling them it's your daughter's birthday, and then pretend to know that it's her birthday by saying they know that in the lead, one by one, they take turns gradually catching on to the fact that they're supposed to know it's her birthday.
We know it's her birthday.
And then
we're pretending not to know because we're going to throw her a surprise party later.
Right. And then this lady turns around and proceeds to be even more idiotic and just, not pick up on any of this, obvious fake stuff they're saying, invite herself to the birthday party. So forget about the fact that she doesn't notice that the little girl is a robot, that the parents don't know it's her birthday. She doesn't notice the social cues when the parents go, you're probably really busy. You probably don't want to come to this small, intimate birthday party that we're having. Social services keeps going, no, tell me when it is. Is it at 4 p.m.? That's the only time I can't go. And they go, oh yeah, it's at 4 p.m. And she goes, oh, in that case, I'll change my previous plan.
Of my other appointment, yeah. I kind of took it as like, she's from, Department of Children and Families. So she is kind of, even if they are acting weird, she's going to be pushy.
She's
so
Columboing
them.
Anyway. She's like, okay, that is actually a much more generous take. I took it as just this super sitcom-y thing that she's just this daffy character from the bureaucracy and is just like, ooh, why don't I come back? Because she serves, again, because this is all sitcom 101, she is serving as the stuffy authority figure, right, like the fancy lady that came over to Mary Tyler Moore's house for her dinner party. Yes. That figure that's going to make everybody have to be on their best behavior.
Right.
And so this is going to be looming over us now that the parents have to make a birthday party.
Right. They are throwing together a last-minute surprise party for this robot child who doesn't have any friends except for the nosy neighbor kid, Harriet.
Doesn't have a birthday.
Who doesn't even have a real birthday, but that's okay. This is what they put on the paperwork. So they're trying to throw together this birthday party. Jamie, the son, is like, all right, I'll take Vicky with me and we'll go out to the store so I can get her a birthday present. And while they're there, he is saying, oh man, he sees all this like case of watches. And he's like, oh gosh, mom would really like that for her birthday. And Vicky's like, mom would really like that for her birthday. And so then she remembers the part of shoplifting and... Yeah,
first she says there's a salesman, or in this case, is the salesman and the detective... Are they the same person or do we meet? Okay, so we do meet this sort of security guy, earlier, like Morty Seinfeld from the last one. Yeah. And he comes up and asks them like, oh, hello, you two. How can I help you? And she says like, we are shoplifting. We are shoplifters. And the brother has to be like, ha ha, she's stupid. She just means we're shopping. We're just going to browse. And then when they're seeing the watches, Jamie, the boy, goes, I just don't know which one mom would like. I wish I could just take all of them.
Take the whole case.
Right.
Yeah.
To which I have to say, at what point does it become their fault, the family's fault? If you have a robot sister that takes everything literally, her defining characteristic in any given situation is she does not understand any form of figurative or idiomatic speech of any kind. She takes everything at exactly face value. When do you stop saying things like, I'm so hungry I could eat that dog or something? Like when do you stop using these metaphors like and turns of phrase?
Right.
Yeah, because of course she's going to do it.
So she picks up the whole case. We get the fun little green screen kind of moment where she's lifting the green.
Every episode has to have something like that. This is one I feel like is fairly light on that, on the makeshift special effect.
Yeah, this is the only time. This is the only special effect we get in this episode. So she lifts the case, and then Jamie's like, "Put that down. Put it back down. I didn't mean it. We just want." And so she puts it back down and she's like, okay. And then she ends up reaching in there and taking, she repeats like, $2 billion of shoplifting by children. And she like reaches in, she takes one, she drops it in her pocket. Mom would love this for her birthday.
Yeah. Again, audible gasps from the audience when Vicky takes the watch.
So then we go back to the house. And that's when the brother realizes that she's stolen the watch. And before they even get like into the other room where they're setting up for the party, he's like, we've got to go take that back. And he's like, you just put it in the same way that you took it out and I will cause a distraction. Yes. Which is the best moment in this entire show.
Yeah, no, this is good. When he says, I'm going to cause a distraction, you go, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, this better be good. What is
going to happen? He falls to the ground while she is putting this jewelry, watch back in the jewelry case. He falls to the ground, grasping his throat like he's choking. Yeah. And every adult in the store doesn't rush to this child's aid. They just sort of like casually look over their shoulders at him, like, what's going on with that kid writhing on the ground? And then slowly they creep a little closer, and there's like 4 adults just sort of staring down at this child on the ground, like gagging and holding his neck like he is choking. Yeah. And they're like, are you okay? Are you sick or something? Like fucking morons. And the kid sits up and goes, no, I'm like, what did he say?
He says, my malaria's back.
No, that was the second thing he said. Oh. He sits up and he's like, of course I'm sick. If I wasn't sick, why else would I be doing this? Yeah. And then he lays back down and says, my malaria. And it was so funny because he like totally stops choking, totally looks at these stupid ass adults like, why are you helping me? I'm a child in distress.
That is true, but I would argue that choking isn't really being sick per se.
No, whatever. It was like
splitting hairs.
It was just so weird that they all were like, what is happening with this kid? Like, it was so confusing. He's literally writhing on the floor in a public space.
Yeah, and ultimately the distraction doesn't work. The store detective catches Vicky putting back the necklace.
Right, and putting back the watch.
Yeah.
So he catches her, and then Jamie sits up, all of a sudden, miraculously healed, and he's like, oh no. And so then the next thing is we're back at the house, and everybody's there, and Harriet has decided to show up as well, and they're all getting ready for the party.
By the way, when we say everybody, Harriet is the only, like, the mom acted when Harriet came over and was like, oh, cool, I'll come to the party too. You get this impression from the mom, like, okay, fine, I guess you can come.
Well,
Harriet
they think
is a godsend at this point.
Oh, right, because they're trying to have a fake party.
party.
No, I know, but the mom's an idiot. Like, this, we've established this. She's stupid. So they need people for the fake party, but you wouldn't want Harriet because everybody hates Harriet.
Yeah,
so
but they don't have anyone else at this party.
Right, and Harriet
the party is
invites
literally
herself.
Social services and Harriet.
And Harriet, exactly. So Harriet invites herself, just like the lady from Department of Children and Families. So anyway, they get a phone call. The dad takes the call and he realizes like it's from the mall police and they're down there, being held because they tried to steal something. So he's like, I'll go sort it out. Let me see, if I'm not back in an hour, make an excuse, cancel the party, whatever. So he goes and they try to solve it. And the cop, like security guard guy, isn't listening to him either.
Yeah, he refuses to shake his hand, the store detective,
right.
when his...
And so, he's trying to explain, and this is where she said, yes, we are shoplifters. This is what we do. So they're having this, the security guard guy isn't listening to the dad. He isn't listening to the kid. And meanwhile, Vicky goes back over to the case and steals the watch again and puts it in the dad's pocket.
Because the dad just says on hand something like, blah, blah, blah. And she knew that my wife wants the watch. And like, it's like when you turn on Siri by accident, like just saying my wife wants the watch will make
like
Vicky
the Amazon
walk over
package
and take
arrives,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Like the drone brings it. Well, so Vicky walked over, she stole it again, she puts it in the dad's pocket, and then the security guard asks the dad for his wallet. He reaches into his pocket, he's like, yeah, I got my wallet right here, and it's the watch, and that's when he's like, you're a modern day Fagin.
Yes, modern day Fagin was not expecting Dickens references.
Well, and I was just wondering, like, how many kids actually watch the musical Oliver? Like, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, this might have been around the time of Oliver and Company, the Disney movie that's based on Oliver, but I actually think that that's a couple years later.
This is 86.
Yeah, I think Oliver and Company is a few years after that. I think this is really just relying on our cultural knowledge.
Yes, because
of
me
Oliver
as a
Twist.
6-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid had absolutely seen the musical Oliver with an exclamation point.
I don't think it's like even having seen the musical. I think it's like
that would be the thing, because of course I wouldn't have read it.
I think it's just that thing of like calling somebody a Fagin is like an Uncle Tom. Like it's supposed to just have a connotation.
Also, by the way, calling someone a Fagin really like set me off for a second because it's real close to another F word that I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
No, he just thinks that he's got the kids working in like a robbery
So he arrests
ring.
him too. And then the next scene we get is the 3 women, Harriet, the mom, and the DCF lady are all back at are still at the house waiting for this party to start. It's been forever. She's like, maybe you guys should just go. There's a knock at the door. of your own home, and all of them go, it must be them. The people who were just coming home, why would they knock at their own door? Don't understand it. They're like, okay, let's hide. So Harriet and the lady from DCF hide, and the mom goes and answers the door, and it's the cop, like an actual police officer, the security officer, and the dad, and Vicky and Jamie. And they're like, surprise! And the cop and everybody is like, what's happening? And so now it all has to come out. What happened?
Yeah, it comes out. And then, like there's, you've got the usual Vicky doesn't understand thing. In this one, it's like the social services lady, she lets them off the hook, right? Like she says, if I'm any judge of character, which I thought was hilarious coming from her, the person who has been completely oblivious to everything going on around her. She says, if I'm any judge of character, she'll never do this again.
Yeah, Vicky is not a thief. She's very shy. This just isn't her. It's her birthday.
Yes.
They were just trying to get her out of the house for a surprise kind of thing.
We've explained earlier in the episode, the mom says the reason why Vicky's not in school is because she's still way too shy for public school.
That's
which
right.
I don't think is the reason why people homeschool their kids.
I mean, sometimes,
Fair
kids that don't, get along with other kids or don't know how to, robots. Yeah.
So again, we get sparks fly between the store security guard and this middle-aged woman. In this case, it's
DCF lady,
the child services lady.
So she starts flirting with him to get him to go ahead and let Vicky off the hook and leave. And the two parents who have been like so annoyed at her and so upset that she was here and like, oh, their whole day was all messed up. Like the dad never even got out of his sweatpants. He's in like a polo shirt and sweatpants.
This is the schlubbiest actor I have ever seen
for this episode. Well, it's supposed to just be like they got caught unawares in their pajamas and their breakfast, while they were having breakfast.
But this guy looks like he has never worn nice clothes
It's
ever.
the wildest thing. I'm like, is that man still wearing sweatpants and an untucked polo shirt when he's going to the mall to pick up his kid? Like, what?
No, he's a good match for the dad on Silver Spoons. Like, it makes sense how they sort of owned the Saturday
That
morning
guy looks
live
nice.
action.
I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, so they send Vicky and Jamie up to their rooms, and then this, DCF lady flirts with the security guy, and he's like, well, why don't we go on a date? And she's like, that sounds great right now. Okay. And so off they go. The cop who got brought along for no lines at all just follows them out. Like, he's like, okay. And the security guy is like, case closed, no charges filed. And the cop's like, all right, follows him out. That's the end of that storyline.
Yeah,
Vicky
the mom says she certainly knows her way around a man. That's the quote on the social services lady.
She saved us. Like, what is happening? So then Vicky and Jamie come back downstairs, and she hands the mom the watch. She's stolen it again.
And I thought, look, maybe it's too on the nose for the 80s. That should be your freeze frame. They don't it almost spoke to the shoddy nature of this show. Like, can they not afford the freeze frame machine because they have to have the guy go the watch or whatever, and
they couldn't afford the freeze frame machine because they had to do the green screen lifting of the case earlier in the episode.
It just feels like 10 seconds too long to have him chase. They should have just frozen with Vicky producing the watch. But anyway, just so, tracking the trope, we get all the usual stuff. Obviously, small wonder, it's like, is the idea that Vicky ultimately learns lessons the way any child in a sitcom does? Or is it more like it's the farcical nature of having to deal with somebody who never learns lessons?
Exactly.
There you have it. But still, I mean, I guess we didn't get the racked with guilt thing because the kid has her return it immediately.
Well, and she can't have guilt.
Right. Well, but I mean, this would be the brother because we get a little bit of that journey with him.
I mean,
but
he
it's
was
so
like,
fast.
he was like, oh boy, immediately, when she got caught. But he doesn't, because he didn't do anything wrong. Like, he wasn't being accused, Yeah,
well, he kind of takes responsibility for it just in the general sense of I was in charge of her when all of this happened.
And he even said, it's my fault that she did it because I said mom would love to have that for her birthday.
Well, like I said, because I spoke in anything other than basic, straightforward, complete sentences, any person should around Vicky. But yeah, I actually thought, for small wonder, the farcical stuff in the middle of this I thought was pretty fun. You know, this actually was a little better than I thought, with the sort of just all the kind of running around in the living room and the store and everything, like the stuff that didn't rely on, like, you told me it was raining cats and dogs, you know, like that kind of stuff, I think worked kind of well.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up with Home Improvement.
Season 4, episode 25, A Marked Man.
Yeah, so we've talked about Home Improvement a handful of times. I feel like this doesn't always go so well. And I have to say, this cold open, I was like, I had a bad feeling about this. It sparked a whole sort of research journey that I've been on for the last
because it's a
few
real
minutes.
person.
Yes, this is a real person and a real phenomenon, exactly.
I saw it in the credits that it said, like, the guy, like the Steve that
all
she
of them,
was calling.
the three of them
was a
are
real
themselves. The cold open of this Home Improvement episode is about the winner of a husband calling contest coming on Tool Time as a guest. It's this very large woman who gets on stage, and she's won a contest for being able to basically screech her husband's name as loud as possible.
Well, so it's a state fair thing, right? So at state fairs, they have the, like, pig calling contest where you're like, Suey, and they like the big screaming sound. Well, so they do the same thing as like a joke, right? It's a funny kind of thing. And they have the husband calling contest. And so she, instead of saying Suey, she's like, Steve.
Okay. So I guess we should back up again and mention that I have no familiarity with any cultural things to do with outside of the New York tri-state area. So I was not familiar with this idea of the pig calling thing. What I took it as initially, even without seeing the thing in the credits, I got the sense initially that this might be a real thing because it was one of those sort of truth is stranger than fiction kind of things. Why would they make this up? But it just kind of played to me like Tim Allen is bringing on a woman who has won the contest for being the most annoying woman. And it had this sort of Jerry Springer vibe to it.
He even says, as he, like, before he introduced her, like, oh, I can ignore any woman anytime, anywhere, as long as there's sports on.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this thing just very much in that men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of attitude we had in the 90s. And that's so critical to Tim Allen's comedy that even though much of it is self-effacing and it's saying, oh, we're the big dummies, it is very much men are like this, women are like this. These are the dynamics of every marriage.
Yeah, they had to get a shitty part in to this episode because this is one of the very few episodes of Home Improvement where Tim learns his lesson really and truly at the end, apologizes to his son for screaming at him, shares how he, like, why he was feeling that way and why it set him off. And it was like, oh, you can relate to other men. You just can't relate to women.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. And so we'll get to all that. To close the loop on this husband calling thing, I did have to find out after I saw that thing in the credits, Deb Selvey as herself or whatever. The joke in the cold open is that Tim can put himself in front of a television set that's playing sports, and this woman is just going to screech in his ear for like a minute straight. And then Al goes like, okay, Tim, so what did the announcer say during the game? And it kind of seems like Tim didn't realize he was going to have to answer that or something?
No, he was doing that face because he couldn't hear
and
Al ask the question.
Yeah, and that's the joke for the rest of the episode is that Tim can't hear well. Ha ha ha, start the theme song. But yeah, Deb Selvey, she's the real winner of the husband calling contest from like 1993.
Amazing.
So I looked this up and learned all about it. And yeah, it was, it still goes on, I think, to this day. I have an article here about the one from 95. So this is like a couple years later.
Well, this episode is 95.
Okay, but this is a couple years after when this lady won. It describes the performance that won this time It says, most women come up with bizarre calls, screeching out their husband's name in as obnoxious a tone as possible. But this woman, dressed in a straw hat, chicken slippers, and red apron decorated with barnyard animals, put on an act. She ran into the bar, sat on a chamber pot, pulled out a newspaper, and simulated a bodily function. Then she realized she had no toilet paper, at which point she began to screech and scream for her husband to bring the desired tissue while she ran around the barn with the chamber pot clinging to her buttocks. I read another article about
That's
a one...
amazing. So they're like skits.
Yeah, another one was a Ice Ice Baby parody. So yeah, it's like you have to kind of go above and beyond in this husband calling contest to win. It makes me feel less queasy about this bit on the show, knowing that this was more just something that would obviously be on brand for Tim Allen to be aware of and to work into his show. And like you said, we get on to the rest of the episode, which is going to be a more sincere thing where we've got another kid that steals something.
That's right. So the three boys, what's the oldest one's name? I always forget the oldest one's name.
Randy is Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
And he's
Mark
in the middle.
Is the youngest one.
Brad is the oldest. Yeah. So you got Brad, Randy, and Mark in that order.
Mullet, and Mullet.
Yeah, Mullet, and Mullet. And they are hanging out in the hardware shop while their dad is there to pick something up.
Yeah, established immediately that Al likes to keep meticulous inventory of everything.
Yes.
While Harry, the owner, is all wild and loose and he doesn't care.
Right. He's like, what, 161 nails? Who cares? And he dumps another bucket of nails like on top of the ones that Al already counted. And so, yeah, Tim gets his hacksaw blade and there's all the jokes because he can't hear. And the boys are looking at this really awesome Swiss Army knife. And they're like, man, if I had that knife, I'd be so cool. This knife is so neat. Imagine all the things I could do if I had it. Oh, yeah. They're just like, they think the knife's so cool. And then they all leave and Al notices the knife is missing.
Yeah.
So then the next day at work, he says to Tim, he's like, hey, I just want you to know, after you guys left, we closed up the store. Nobody came in after you, and that the knife that the boys were looking at wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, he says the knife the boys were admiring is gone, and of course Al approaches it with characteristic sensitivity, and Tim is all defensive. He says, maybe Harry stole it, and Al is like,
money.
Yeah, why would he steal it from himself for the insurance money, which I thought was very funny, and then Al starts talking to him about the time that he got caught stealing and eating a cookie from his mom.
They were at the grocery store, and his mom had walked away to go get the appetite suppressant, the children's appetite suppressant.
Cannot have a scene with Al pass without a joke about him being a fatso, which I'll just say again, Al is an absolute snack. He is very, very mildly overweight for his age.
He's got a pot belly.
Yeah, but I would honestly even disagree with that characterization. He's just like kind of a stocky guy. He doesn't come across as like someone that just drank too much beer and like has a big gut.
Oh, he looks like a young version of Santa, though.
He's burly. I think that... I do like the idea of him as a young version of Santa. I really wish Richard Karn at this time had played that rather than casting Tim Allen as Santa Claus in 27 movies.
Hey, that's right. That's a good point. That would have been a better casting. Anyway, this will be another fan favorite episode because everybody loves it when Jay goes off about his Al Borland
It's
crush.
unfortunate Richard Karn did not have the box office pull at this time that Tim Allen did.
Tim Allen did.
He's not fat. Is all I'm saying.
So his mom walks away to go get the children's appetite suppressant. He sees the cookie sitting there. He takes it off the shelf. He eats it before his mom gets back, and that's it. And he has felt guilty about it ever since. And like he's like Danny Partridge, right? Like he is overcome with guilt.
He never got his award ceremony.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He was overcome with guilt. He went back to the store and he apologized and all of that. But his whole life he has just known like, oh, he's like you too, where it's It's like you do one thing wrong and you're like, I will never do anything wrong again. Whereas I'm like, how can I get away with it better the next time?
Yeah, but he's telling this to Tim in the spirit of like, hey, look, boys do these things. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It's this thing that, we all sort of figure out morality.
You have the temptation, you have the impulse control, and you have to learn it. And it's okay. It's a lesson to be learned. And I learned a valuable lesson that day I stole a cookie, and you'll learn a valuable lesson, whatever. Your kids, whichever one of your kids did this, will learn a valuable lesson. Yeah. And so Tim is, not happy about it, but he goes home and he tells Jill, and he's like, boys, get in here. And the boys are like, I didn't do it. And then Mark just kind of like the youngest boy starts hiding behind them as they're talking.
I think this scene is pretty funny. I think we get a lot of good stuff here. First, before the boys even come in, when Tim is explaining this to Jill beforehand and saying, look, I denied it, but Al says that the Swiss Army knife is missing. He goes, that's the reason why the Swiss Army is the force that they are today. I thought that was kind of a funny line. And then when he's having this talk, when the two parents are having this talk with the boys, and they're sort of accusing each other, and Randy is saying it's Brad saying it's Randy, and they're going like, well, Brad stole your, that car magazine with the hot ladies on the front. And Tim goes, what? The bevy of beauties from Chevy edition? I thought that was good.
Yeah, and then Brad's like, well, Randy stole Mom's Victoria's Secret catalog. And Tim was like, hey, that's mine too. Yeah. And the audience is laughing, of course. And then slowly Mark just starts backing up behind the brothers because no one's interrogating him because no one thinks it's him.
No, because he never does anything wrong. That's his dynamic on the show. Exactly. He's always picked on, and the two of them get into monkey shine.
And they do. Like, those two boys would be the ones that would be naughty like that because they are the naughty ones and he's not. And so they're like, and then they repeat the, callback joke that Tim had earlier. Oh, well, maybe Harry stole it himself for the insurance money.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, it is sort of like, if we compare them to the, very funny forced casualness that Danny Bottaducci and the other ones have, the Randy and Brad have the convincing casual attitude of innocent kids. Right. Like they can kind of tell.
Mark's like, nobody see me.
But the scene is inconclusive. They have the conversation and nothing comes out, and the parents are kind of like, all right.
Yeah, and they don't even really interrogate Mark, right? Like they
don't
ask
suspect.
The two others one at a time, and then they get all mad that they're even being accused because they didn't do anything, and nobody ever looks at Mark. He just fades into the background, and then they all go back outside to play ball.
And there's a subsequent scene with Tim and Jill in the bedroom. Two of them share a bedroom or something?
Three of them. They all three. They have lofted. I mean, it's like this one of these huge, sitcom bedrooms, and the boys all kind of have different lofted beds around the room.
I just think it's funny that in this world, they live in a suburban home out in God knows where. Right. And your three boys, two of which are teenagers, you're making share a room.
So you can have a guest room.
But I'm just thinking in comparison to what we're always talking about with the metropolitan shows at exactly this time. Like this family, he's a TV host. Like they can afford to give
Ohio,
the kids.
But they only have a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, exactly. Those kids don't need to be sharing a bedroom at this age. It is more the frugality of Home Improvement, the TV show, I think.
Set. So they go to put the laundry away, and they're still discussing I can't believe the boys would lie, but it really doesn't seem like they're lying. I wonder, gosh. And so then Tim immediately is starting to snoop in the bedroom when Jill's putting the laundry away, and she's like, please don't do that. My mom used to do that to me. Like, it's really, it really is a violation of privacy. Like, we trust the boys. We believe the boys. Like, let's not do that.
I wanted to pause on this. Was this a thing for you? The snooping? This was one of those things that as, I made friends out in the world, and you see the sort of different household cultures that different families have. Both the snooping, the putting putting away the laundry for them. Like, that was something that I sort of learned, like, oh, there's other kids that, like, their parents clean their rooms for them.
Yeah, hell
they
no.
organize things like that. I was one where, like, there would be no snooping, but there was no access at all. Like, once I was past the age of like 8 or 9 or something, it was like my room was my room. Like, my mom would do my laundry for me, but I don't know if she put it in a little stack somewhere or something, but it was up to me to, I presided over all aspects of my room. Definitely as a teenager, there would definitely be no snooping. But again, they just wouldn't step foot inside my room.
Do you think that there was no snooping, or they just did it so well that you didn't know?
No, I think, for one thing, I was a mark my whole life. Like, I was never doing
No,
anything
you're a
wrong.
marks, honey.
And I think my whole family, frankly, had the sort of non-confrontational attitude of, like, they wouldn't want to find out
Right,
if I
like,
was
I
up to
don't
something. Yeah, if I had, like, drugs hidden in my sock drawer or something.
Underneath
So yeah,
your
I don't
most
think
recent screenplay.
Yeah, I don't think we had any snooping.
Yeah, I mean, same. Like, it wasn't like it was all my own domain. I think if my parents did ever snoop, they did it so well that I didn't know. I definitely, like, my mom did do my laundry, and she would leave it up on a pile, in a pile on my bed. So, and like, in terms of like cleaning my room, I was constantly in trouble because my room was always a mess. So no, my parents didn't clean my room. But yeah, I remember one time my mom and I got in a really awful fight, and I like wrote this letter, like I was gonna, like, it was like a diary, or it was like to her, but I was never gonna give it to her. But then I sort of passive aggressively left it out on my bed, like right when you open the door, like where you would see. And
it's like the opposite of a suicide note.
Right.
It's like a murder note.
Right. I was just like, I'm going to leave this letter that sort of is like a little bit, like written for dramatic effect kind of thing. I left it out so my mom would see it, and she saw it, and she was like, I wasn't looking in your room for anything. It was just there, and I saw my name, and so I read it, and she was so apologetic, and I was like, I didn't tell her at the time because I was like, yeah, be apologetic, but like, yeah, like I totally left it out so she'd find it because I was so mad at her.
Yeah, this is something that is just like different with everyone, I think. And in this case, they seem to have this dynamic where, yes, they are allowed access into the kids' drawers. Like Jill would say, oh, my mom's ruse was to snoop and then claim to be putting away my underwear.
Right, but in a desk drawer, so it didn't make any sense. Yeah. So she was like, I don't want to turn into my mother. And then Tim makes a gross face like, I don't know your mother. And so, he kind of stops snooping, and then she goes, Mark, how many times do I have to tell him to not put his dirty clothes back in with his clean clothes? And she picks up the jeans that are dirty, that have gone back in the drawer, and flops them over her arm, and then something falls out of the pocket, blunk, and it clunks on the ground, and there's the Swiss Army knife.
Yep, the telltale Swiss Army knife. And then this is going to sort of change a little bit into like a how do we parent the kids thing, because Tim's reaction, I guess there's like...
Yeah, they don't even take a moment to discuss it. He just like bolts downstairs ready to like wring the kid's neck.
He does like a few seconds of the Mrs. Garrett, I'm going to not let you know that I know and give you enough rope to hang yourself with.
Right.
But he can't hold out for more than that. And then he just goes off, oh, you're a sneaky little thief. Like,
he calls him a rotten
kid.
Thief, yeah.
Yeah, he's just like... He's truly offended, like this is not, the kind of person you should be.
Yeah.
And Mark is, sort of, it's unprecedented, I guess, for him to get in so much trouble.
Out. He like totally freaks out, runs upstairs, starts crying.
And so that leads to this sort of like Jill and Tim fight. about, was this the right way? Did Tim overreact?
And he's like, you underreact. And she's like, I didn't even have time to do any reacting because you're doing this. And now you're saying he's grounded for a month and you go off to work every day. And I'm the one that has to be the police. So you get to be the bad guy, but I'm the one that's got to get stuck at home with him. We need to have these conversations before we make these parenting decisions. And and he's just like so angry. He's not having any of it. She's like, fine, whatever. You're a pain in the ass. And she's like, I'm going to go talk to Mark. And so she goes upstairs to try to like smooth things over and get him to talk about what happened and why did he do it and whatever. Yeah. And he is not ready to talk.
No, he's just sitting there being all mopey.
Playing a Game Boy, by the way, which would be the first thing that you're grounded from.
Yeah, I really... it gives me no pleasure to say this, but I think I might have to be with Tim Allen on this one. Like,
not the screaming.
Of course, there's a medium in between, but I actually think I would err on his side of consequences versus her, like, super touchy-feely, like, almost kind of apologizing to him. Yeah, continuing the privileges with the video games and everything. And sort of having this attitude of like, oh, are you ready to talk to me about this? A couple random observations in this scene. Jill and Mark have the same haircut. I noticed when the two of them are sitting next to each other, like the straight on two shot of the two of them. Little Mark basically has the haircut of a middle-aged woman circa 1994. Yeah, kind of like Amanda Beards from Married with Children, the Marcy Darcy.
Marcy Darcy.
Ever since that time we were watching Friends and they were all on the bed and you remarked how you liked seeing them in the socks because
or bare feet. They had actual bare feet because everybody wears shoes in television shows.
I was going to mention before we even got to this, just watching Tim walk around his house in like these, high top sneakers
boots,
and the jeans, the shirt tucked into his jeans with the belt and everything. Like, you mentioned I wear sweatpants around the house. That seems normal. Like, it started seeming weird to me to be watching this guy dressed like he was going to teach shop class, like in his own house at like 9 p.m. And now this scene that we're talking about with Mark and Jill having the heart-to-heart in his room, I'm noticing he's lying on the bed on
with
his stomach.
Sneakers on.
Yeah, boots. He's got the sort of like brown.
Yeah, like 90s hiking boots that we wore kind of all the time.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly.
Like Timberlands or whatever.
Yes, that kind of shoe. Like, Jesus, your mom isn't going to yell at you about that, about wearing boots in your bed. Yeah. And so that scene ends with her going like, well, okay, I guess we'll talk next time. And so, that's when I'm kind of like, I don't know, Jill, like you need to have a little backbone.
Yeah,
also.
well, I feel like she would have because she does in other episodes.
Yeah.
And so I think this is just now she's trying to like smooth it over and see if he'll even talk because he got, grounded for a month, told he was a rotten child and a dirty little thief. And now they're never going to know why he did what he did, right? Yeah,
which I will say, since you mentioned that, this is the only one where, of the episodes we're talking about, where, it's not a present for somebody. There's not direct peer pressure.
Right.
It is just... he wanted to be cool and he wanted to have it.
Right. And we do find out later, he eventually does like tell his reasoning and he tells it to Al because he and Al have a heart-to-heart.
Yeah. I mean, I guess before we get there, just quickly, we get a Wilson scene. And I think I complained about this in one of our earlier home
you didn't like
ones.
The kite and the thing they did with the kite? I thought this was kind of good.
As an idea, it's fine. What they're doing is Wilson is flying a kite, and so he's holding up the like spool of string thing. He's holding that over his face. So you can have a camera angle that sort of bifurcates the fence. So you've got a straight shot of Wilson looking right at you, but it's okay because he's holding up this big spool of string from his kite, and that's covering the bottom half of his face. That's fine in most of the scene, but the first shot is this wide shot that's up above looking down on him, and they just don't arrange it right. And his string thing is not covering his face.
No,
you can see
it. But it's so far away that you can't really see it.
I think in our modern age of HD, this is Disney Plus. If this was Small Wonder, if we were watching this on a crappy YouTube dub that's been overcompressed 10 times over.
This is what they were doing for 1995. You couldn't see it in 95.
They should have thought ahead, because we're watching this on Disney Plus, taken directly. This was shot on film. This is nicely produced ABC show. And so you can see his face clear as day. And all he had to do was hold up that thing a little bit higher in that shot. And
well,
I
thought you were going to complain because in order to keep his hands like steady and balanced at the place it needed to be, he didn't just like rest his arm on the fence. He wrapped his pinky around the top of the fence so that he would know where to keep his hands steady. And I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, you got to think that's like a take 4 thing when he's moving it around too much.
His arm is so tired.
And they're going like, no, I don't know what that actor's name is. But
his
buddy,
name
you gotta...
is Earl Hindman.
Earl, come on, we could see your face all over the place. I know we just filmed it directly in that wide shot, but, this time they'll be able to see it.
Well, so in the zoom out shot, when they went back to the wide shot at the end of the scene, they actually used the kite itself to be the cover.
That's what they should have done in the first place. But anyway, it's your standard Wilson scene. He quotes Nietzsche saying something about the idea of like he who steals, just amplifies his own negative feelings or something, kind of like the crime is its own punishment kind of thing. Yeah, then we're off to the races. We get the call from a hardware store. So repeating the whole subtrope from Partridge Family. Where is Mark?
Right,
He's
he
run away
doesn't
from
come home. He doesn't come home from school. He doesn't show up to the bus with his brothers. They come home without him and they're like, we don't know where he is. Yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but I had a little brother. If my little brother was supposed to meet me at the bus stop for school, or we rode our bikes to school, like when he was supposed to meet me at the bike rack and he didn't show up, there would be no like, I'm going to go home and call my parents. It would be like, alert everyone, my brother isn't here. We're all freaking out. These two ne'er-do-wells are like, man, that little one we don't give a shit about.
You get the impression they probably just ditch him all the time. So like they normally don't know.
Which is what we then find out. So they call her, they're calling all around. He's not anywhere. He's not at the pet store. He's not his friends. He's not anywhere. So then they get a call from the hardware store and he's there. And he's having this heart-to-heart with Al, and Al tells him the cookie story. And then I can't remember if he tells Al or if he tells Tim and Jill when they get there that the reason that he did it is because he wanted Randy and Brad to think he was cool. And he thought maybe if I have this knife, they'll play with me more and they'll think I'm cool.
Yeah, because they said straight up, like, that knife is really cool. Anybody who has that would be our hero.
Yeah.
Tim shows up and sort of gives him the heart-to-heart of like, Tim considers it, he's like personally insulted when the boys have a moral failing because it means that he's a bad parent.
That, but also that you stole from our friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like these, Harry and Al are family. Yes. And the hardware store is like, our second home. Why would you ever steal from there? Yeah,
exactly. And Mark doesn't have much to say for himself. We've already established this is the flimsiest motivation of any of them. And it is just like his immature sense of morality.
Yeah,
just not really knowing right from wrong. We get, like you said, Al tells him his whole, origin story of stealing the cookie. That's kind of like it ends with the gag of Jill snooping in Randy's room. We go back
in all
to
of
that
their
thing.
rooms. She is actually putting away underwear this time. And then she comes upstairs. She finds Tim snooping again. And he's like, no, I'm not snooping. I'm just collecting all my magazines so I can have them back. And he goes, you want to see what they're hiding from you? And hands her a recipe. And she's like, why would they hide my tuna and lima bean casserole recipe? And I start cracking up because I was like, okay, that's something Jay would steal from his this, Mom. A tuna and lima bean casserole recipe.
And
not feel bad about it.
And it just reminded me of the diet thing from last week, how everything, just like diets are tied to like your physical copy of the document.
Right.
It's the same thing with a recipe. Once you hide the recipe, she'll never make that food again.
That's right. She's not going to be able to do it. She's got too many recipes. She doesn't memorize any of them.
Yeah.
And so then she's kind of like, he leaves and she's like, I wonder what other recipes they're hiding from me. And she starts going through the drawer, and then Randy comes in and catches her, and then she does turn into her mother. She's like, I was just putting away your underwear. And he's like, in the desk drawer? And she's like, yeah, I learned it from my mother. It's good for when you're studying and you realize you're not wearing any underwear. Yeah. I mean, that awkward lie was so much better than the bad awkward lying in Small Wonder, but it's the same idea.
It's still sitcom-y. It's still like, you, the audience, understand that I'm lying, but this person isn't going to know that.
But the kid does know, and that's what makes that one funny. That's what makes that one work, is that he's looking at her like, okay, Mom, like, you're so full of it, and that's why that one's way better. But can we just kind of talk about all 4 episodes right now? Because only one of them did the kid get a punishment.
Well, let's see. In the Partridge Family, he gives himself the punishment of going back and returning the thing and confessing. And
but he doesn't have any like other consequences, right? Like there isn't any, okay, and now you're going to lose Game Boy for a week.
Joe gets the punishment of having to work at the store.
And Tootie and Natalie have to do her chores when she's at work, and that's their punishment.
Yeah. And so you're saying that's the one?
That's the one. Small Wonder, no punishment. She's a robot. It's everybody's
there
like,
isn't
whatever.
A punishment in Home Improvement. Like, I know that's not really the focus of it, but they don't say like, oh, and by the way, blah blah blah,
you're still grounded or whatever.
Or something like that.
Not that I remember.
Okay.
They were trying. He was saying you were grounded for a month. She was trying to talk him back to 2 weeks, but like,
well, it is. I mean, again, a lot of it I think has to do with the point of view. Like, Facts of Life is squarely from the point of view of the girls. And so it makes sense that that has to have an action and consequence thing. Small Wonder, like we said, is very much, Vicky is this sort of like force of circuitry, and she cannot be reasoned with.
Force of circuitry.
She cannot learn anything ever. And so it has to be about the antics of trying to compensate for her, basically. So nobody can learn any lesson except how do we like convince people that she's real.
And Home Improvement is Tim's point of view, and he does kind of learn his lesson that he doesn't have to scream at his kids in order to get the point across.
What I would say is Home Improvement tries to sort of have it both ways. I feel like it tends to be from the point of view of the family, and it tends to like, it gives you scenes with the boys amongst themselves. Yeah. And so, obviously it changes episode by episode, but I feel like something like this, they do want to do the Full House thing of having Mark really learn a lesson and have an episode about understanding why stealing is bad. But at the same time, they're still going to give the bulk of the episode to Tim and Jill. Yeah. And so it has to mostly be about them coming to understand what's the best way to deal with our kid stealing.
And again, I'll say, like I said at the beginning of our part with Home Improvement, it is one of the very rare episodes where you actually see Tim like come all the way around and apologize and realize that he's done something wrong and actually change his ways. Like, he went to his child and he was like, these are the reasons that I yelled, and this is why it set me off, and I'm sorry that I did that, and I won't do that again, but like, here were my reasons. And I was just like, what is even happening right now? This is not a Home Improvement that I recognize. Yeah.
So I'll say overall, I'll just go first this time and say Partridge Family for me, hands down, loved it. Like, I just thought it was really funny, like in all the ways it was intending to be funny. Like, I thought that the sitcom-y jokes that they gave to little Danny Bonaducci were really funny, and he really pulls them off well. I think any episode of that show that focuses on him and just kind of has the older kids around to play the songs and stuff and be the sort of, the outside color, like that really worked for me. And the weird, we talk about how the older sitcoms tend to be more of a straight line, and then you get the sort of fun riff on it, when it finally gets to the 21st century and Dan Harmon does something. Whereas this one, it had that unexpected twist where the learning your lesson only goes through the first half, and then he has the fun, like, oh, now I'm like the second coming, this whole middle act where he's going around telling everyone how great he is, and then having to have this whole getting banned from the store. That's definitely my favorite. But all of these were really solid, and I do want to give a shout out to that Small Wonder episode as being definitely not good, but for a show that is, as we have said, truly one of the worst. I think a lazy concept with lazy execution and unskilled actors. This was one that actually kind of had fun with the farcical stuff outside of the robot stuff. And so, yeah, really solid lineup for me.
Well, that is not my take, but that's okay. I'm struggling with these to come up with a favorite. I mean, the Danny Bonaducci stuff, it was funny and whatever. And I did, like, you're right. Like, I liked that it was kind of, they took the story and did it three ways, which was nice because, like, the story of the shoplifting and, like, learning the lesson that the other three focused on, that was the whole story they did in the first, 10 minutes. Yeah. And that was, you're right, that was good. And Danny Bonaducci is funny. But yeah, I don't know. I think if I had to pick a favorite, it's going to be the Facts of Life, just because I think that Charlotte Rae, in her Mrs. Garrett little whirling dervish that she is every time she's in a scene, she makes me laugh. And I think that that's funny. And I used to, while we were watching it this time, I was like, man, I loved this show. I loved watching Facts of Life. Like, I tried to always watch Facts of Life. And I was super young because it came on, like, it started in 79. So we talked about this. Like, I never watched that first season, and I saw the kind of early seasons in reruns. But there were a few solid years there where it was like, that was a show that I, as a young kid, like 4 or 5 years old, I liked because I liked the girls. And I didn't remember anything about Mrs. Garrett being funny. And I think she is. And she comes into a room and she just is like, oh, girls.
Can I say, how amazing would it have been, circa this time, you have a triple-hander movie with Carol Burnett, this lady that played Mrs. Garrett, and Bob Newhart's secretary from Newhart. The three of them in like a First Wives Club type comedy right? Just writes itself perfect.
All the redheads.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they would be like sisters or something. Yeah,
and then you have Lucille Ball play their mother.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go.
Exactly. So,
like, for that reason, I think but it's a pure nostalgia pick. Like, I honestly didn't think any of these were particularly great shows. I think they were all sort of standard, boring sitcoms. And this trope, to me, didn't have any of the, like, juice and fun that some of the other ones do.
Wow, yeah. No, I thought this one, again, like, until we hit the snag of the husband calling contest at the beginning of Home Improvement, I thought this was, like, pretty much pure joy from start to finish. So I don't know.
I love it. Maybe. I love that it's usually you that's like, blah, blah, that's the naysayer. And I'm usually the optimistic one. So I'm glad for my nana downer day, you've got some happiness. Yeah, no, I don't know if I was just in a good mood or if the Partridge Family just really like picked up my spirits. But yeah, in any case, so much for shoplifting. What are we talking about next week? Next week, you better get your baby oil and all your lubricants ready, Jay, because it's time for an orgy. Yeah, to paraphrase Seinfeld, I'm going to need all kinds of lotions if I'm going to be an orgy guy. What are we watching? We're watching Absolutely Fabulous, Season 3, Episode 3, Sex. Will and Grace, Season 3, Episode 6, Love Plus One. How I Met Your Mother, Season 3, Episode 3, Third Wheel, and Party Down, Season 2, Episode 3, Nick DeCintio's Orgy Night.
Yep, next week is all things threesomes, orgies, multi-person sexcapades, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.